He's at rest waiting for his Lord. And it is his grandson who is now the king. So he has this vision. Was it at night? Probably. Was he asleep? Yep. Seems so. And this is what he saw. He says, in my vision that night, I, Daniel, saw a great storm churning the surface of the great sea, with strong winds blowing from every direction. Then 4 huge beasts came up out of the water, each different from the other. Okay, quick question. Now Henry's here. Did Daniel, so put your hand up, I want an answer, know what he was seeing? Did he understand the vision? Did he understand the dream? Or was he lost? Lost or understood? Come on, someone give me an answer. Let's get a little bit of dialogue going for a moment. Did Daniel understand this vision and dream? Anyone here going to give me an answer? I'm going to ask someone if they don't. Okay, Conrad, is that? No, that's Glenn. Glenn, I know you know prophecy. What do you reckon? Did Daniel understand what he was seeing? Obviously, he sees these beasts coming up out of the sea. Coming not just from the sea, but from a stormy sea. Did he have any idea what he was seeing?
No.
No. Yes, no?
Not much anyway.
Not much. Anyone else got a different view on that? I tend to probably go with you. Not much, but I reckon he knew a little. He had an idea. And I'll show you why in a minute. Verse 2. What we're going to look at first is the symbolism in this incredible prophecy. In my vision that night, now let's look at it carefully, I, Daniel, saw a great storm churning the surface of the great sea, with strong winds blowing from every direction. So the first question I would ask is, what does the great sea, which is encountering a terrible storm, represent in prophecy? These are keys. If I had my keys on you, have you got keys there, Liz? I'll show you something. Oh, Danae has the car keys. Have you got car keys there, Hunty? Come up here for a second, Hunty. Let them say. I want to talk to you for a second. The directing will be right for a second. Come here. He's going to put a watch on. I'm going to ask him some questions. These are Hunty's keys. Miserable lot of keys they are. There's not many of them. Well, let's pretend up here where they can see you, bro. It's a wide shot. It's all right. This is not going to television. Now, they're your keys. Which key will, if I ask you a question, will that key get me into your house?
It will not.
Okay.
Your studio.
That gets you into the studio.
Correct.
What about, let's look at your car.
That's my
Don't ruin my...
Okay.
Is that your car key?
No, that's your house.
So what happens if I put that into your car?
Won't fit.
Won't fit? Won't work?
No.
Okay. Let's go over to this set here. Car key?
No.
What's that one for?
All the kids' Sabbath school rooms.
That's for here?
Here.
Okay, let's try 2 more. What about that one? Car key?
No, that's my trailer.
That's for the one that got
Out at your
burnt?
farm.
Oh, okay. This one.
That's the start button for my car.
So that's your car key?
Correct.
So if I have that, I can get into your car?
Correct.
All right. Prophecies like that. You've got to go looking for the key that's going to get into Hunty's car. And to find the key, you've got to go where the key ring is. And that is the Bible. So you've got, thanks, Hunty. See, that was good. And now everyone knows who's behind the camera. When you're studying Bible prophecy, you've got to work out what the keys are, because it's hidden. I do have a question. Why do you reckon, just a quick one, I won't spend too much time on this, why do you think God cloaks Bible prophecy? Why is it somewhat hidden? Because if I gave this prophecy to someone off the street without the knowledge, without the keys, they wouldn't have a clue what it's talking about, mostly. Why do you think God hides Bible prophecy? Tana, down here. Henry, Tana. Why does God hide Bible prophecy?
Because he wants us to seek, to search for it, to look for it.
That's a very good answer. He wants us to search and seek and look. He does say, seek me and you will find me. There's no doubt about that. We do, wait there, Henry, because I haven't finished with that question. We do have a God, for whatever reason, wants us to search and seek out truth. That's why in Adventism and in Christianity, it's a great, great tragedy that we have become a people who do not any longer seek through the Scripture, through the Bible, God and His truths like perhaps we used to in the past. And we need to change our focus and our attention and go back to the Bible and genuinely seek God, because it's how He works. That's number one. Is there any other reason? I can think of one other at least. Why does God hide Bible prophecy? Good answer, 100%, Tana. Big tick, green tick. Why else? Up the back there. I can't even see who it is, but
It's Nikki, but that's okay.
thank you, Nikki.
To allow things to unfold as they need to.
I like that answer, and it's close. To allow things to unfold as they need to. Tana again. Very, very close, Nikki.
I think He wants us to experience Him.
Yes.
Now, when you experience something and you experience Him, you are able to share that to others.
I think you're both right. And can I add to it? I think God hides Bible prophecy because He wants to protect it a little. These are messages for certain times. And this message today is for what time? Our time. It's for our time. So let's have a look at the key. First, let's have a look at this C. What is it? And you've got to use the Bible to understand the keys. Now, Daniel and the Revelation go together like Lizka and me. Hand in hand. They're married. Those two books were written for each other. Daniel is chapter 1 and Revelation is chapter 2. Given by the same God to different prophets 500 years apart. But they go together. In Revelation chapter 17, verse 15, we get a clue when it says here, then he said to me, don't worry about the prophecy, just look for the key. The waters which you saw where the harlot sits, and that's what we're talking about. It's actually right in context here, but I'm not going to explain that today. I just want you to see the key are what? Read it with me. Peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. I want you to read that with me. You ready? We're going to do it together. You ready? Because I want you to understand. The waters which you saw where the harlot sits are, now let's go, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And so that is who this prophecy, that is what the sea, which is raging in this prophecy, represents. Peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues. Raging because it's unsettled, because it's an angry time, because it's a difficult time for the world. I have no doubt that this key, when you turn it in, when you put it in the key, and turn it, it works. That's what this is. So the four huge beasts. So we've got the sea, which is multitudes, nations, tongues, and peoples. What about these four huge beasts? Well, this is why I reckon Daniel had some idea what it was talking about. Because in verse 17 of this vision, it says, these four huge beasts represent four kingdoms that will arise from the earth. And so what you've got is four great beasts coming up out of the sea to the where? To the earth. Now, I'm not going to explain that too much. I want to move on, and you'll get a feel for this as we get into it. The first beast was like a lion with eagle's wings. As I watched, its wings were pulled off, and it was left standing with its two hind feet on the ground like a human being, and it was given a human mind. Who do you think this first beast is? Well, you go back in history. If I were to say to you, what is the national emblem of Australia, what is it? What animal? Which one? Pretty much a kangaroo. In fact, of late, boxing kangaroo. Let's go to New Zealand, who never win much, the poor guys. What's their national animal? Okay, kiwi. Okay, England. A badger? Who said a badger? Not a badger. But that was a good answer, actually. A lion. The English lion. Okay, let's get a little harder. The United States. What sort of eagle? A seagull. Well, it is a seagull compared to our wedge tail, isn't it, Auntie? A bald eagle. Okay, now I'm going to get really hard. Russia. Oh. Okay, I'll test you even further. France. Very good. What about Spain? A what? A bull. Very good. How do you know that, Marker? What about Peru? I don't know the answer to that. What about Peru? Oh, a condor. No, our wedge-tailed eagles kill condors, mate. No. We'll argue about that later. Hunty, back me up. Look, the fact is that the imagery that God is using here is pretty well known even to us in our modern culture. He's using animals to represent nations. We already know, because the Bible told us in verse 17, that these animals coming out of the sea do represent great nations. Now, this one is a lion with eagle's wings. So what you do is you go back in history and you have a look, and it doesn't take long to recognize that in history, a lion with wings, actually, represents the great kingdom of Babylon, an ancient Babylon. And actually, Daniel 7 is actually just building on the great image of Daniel 2, which we've already done. And so if you're listening to this and it sounds familiar, it's because we've already done Daniel 2 in this series. Ancient Babylon went from 605 BC to 538 BC, and there you can see some real pictures of the ruins of ancient Babylon. Do you know what country ancient Babylon is in? Iraq. I would love to go. I haven't. I know Gary Kent and some other friends of mine have actually. Has anyone here been to ancient Babylon? Wow. Nikki, you've been to ancient Babylon, but not ancient Babylon. You were close. Weren't allowed to. So you're not allowed to go to ancient Babylon. I wonder if they let you now. You know, ancient Babylon was this built by Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, Nabopolassar, Belshazzar. This was an incredible empire and city. There you can see the ancient Ishtar gate. Daniel, the prophet, who had this vision, would walk under that gate. It was very much central to the kingdom of Babylon. And I went to the Pergamon Museum and I walked in, and guess what I saw? The Ishtar Gate. And so I walked under it and I felt almost reverent, because I'm walking under it, I'm thinking, Daniel has walked under this very gate, these very bricks. And then I found later there's about a half a dozen Ishtar gates around the world, and they're all replicas, and that was one of them. So that kind of spoiled it. But it was a marvelous city. It had the incredible Euphrates River flowing through the middle of it, and Babylon was something. But after Babylon, Daniel sees another beast coming up out of the sea, coming up where there's lots and lots of people, coming up in times of great trouble. He says, then I saw a second beast, and it looked like oh, by the way, let's go back here just for a second. I better not miss this. Why did the lion have wings? Very swift. Their armies swiftly moved across the earth. Why was it given the heart of a man and it stands up? This is a bit of revision if you've been in this series. Because Nebuchadnezzar the king gave his heart to Jesus, to God. And so his heart went from being a ferocious animal's heart, which would tear apart anything, and this is what Jesus does to you when you give your heart to him. He stands you up, and you're no longer a beast, you're a human being. God made Nebuchadnezzar a born-again follower of his. It's a great story, so that's why the wings and that are there. So we go here, and we have, then I saw a second beast, and it looked like a bear. It was rearing up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and I heard a voice saying to it, get up, devour the flesh, and devour the flesh of many people. This second kingdom that came after Babylon was Medo-Persia. The 3 ribs in its mouth, do you know what they represent? Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt, the 3 great kingdoms that it took out. Why was it standing up on one side higher than the other? Because it was a combination of Media and Persia, a amalgamation, an alliance. The Medes were the weaker and the Persians were the stronger. So what Daniel's actually seeing here is a progression through history of the different nations that would rule the then known world. And Medo-Persia, represented by a bear, was one of the great empires that the world has seen. They took great swaths of territory. You've got a picture there on my left, on your left, on my right. You know who these guys are? They're the immortals. The Medo-Persians had these immortals, were literally undefeatable in battle. In fact, the first time and the only time the immortals were ever defeated is when they came up against this next guy. Daniel chapter 7 verse 6. Then the third of these strange beasts appeared, and it looked like a leopard. It had 4 birds' wings on its back, and it had 4 heads. Great authority was given to this beast. And of course, we have Babylon, then we have Medo-Persia, and Medo-Persia went from 538 to 331 BC. And then in 331 BC, this guy, Alexander the Great, took on the Medo-Persians in the Battle of Abila, or some know it as the Battle of Gaugamela. And I've shared a little bit with you how they believe. Now, it depends who you're going to listen to. If you listen to the Greek historians, the ancient Greek historians, they'll tell you Alexander the Great went into battle against Darius with 30,000 hoplite Greek soldiers and a cavalry perhaps of 5,000 against 1,000,000 Persians. I think that might be a little bit of an exaggeration. But at least on the other side, there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers. And Alexander the Great, by the end of the day, had defeated the king of Medo-Persia and was the king of the world. He never lost a battle. He even went down into India and took the Indians on with their elephants. Now, these were great ancient civilizations, very well advanced. I mean, you go and study some of these countries, nations, India, China, the Middle East. They have civilizations that go back thousands and thousands of years. And often we get caught in European civilization. We think that's the only history that's worth studying. It's not true. And Alexander the Great took his army down with Bucephalus, his magnificent black horse. I'm going to look at him here. Isn't he? Is that a picture of Bucephalus? No, not really. A movie. But he would charge in. This black horse went with Alexander the Great for his entire army sojourn. And that black horse died not long before Alexander the Great did. Now, he went down into India and he even defeated the Indian kings with their elephants, and that was no mean feat. No one really ever defeated those guys before. And he was incredible. And the ancient Greece went from 331 to 168 BC. This leopard has 4 heads and 4 wings. Well, the 4 wings, of course, have you ever seen a leopard, a real leopard? I was in Africa. They are something. You know, they're actually fiercer than lions. I might have told you, we went on a safari in Kruger National Park, and the guy that took us on safari, you know what? And this is the truth. We're in the back of one of these trucks, and I'm worried about 3 things in Africa. What do you think they are? Well, 4 actually. In the water, 5. I'm worried about hippos, and in the water, what's the other one? Crocodiles. On the land, I'm worried about lions, and what else should you worry about on the land? Elephants. I got chased by an elephant over there. I didn't like it either. Lions, elephants, what else? There's 2 others that really bothered me in Kruger. Snakes don't bother me. I'm an Australian man. I'm not scared of snakes. I'm not a Kiwi. Snakes don't bother me. I know how to deal with snakes. Huh? No, I was never worried about the rhino, but I probably should have been, because apparently they're pretty ferocious. I was worried about lions. I was worried about leopards. I was worried about, I'm just trying to remember what I was worried about. Lions, leopards, elephants, and hyenas. In fact, hyenas probably bothered me the most. They're big. I thought they were little. They are huge. we were walking across to the fence. There's some hyenas across the fence from the campground we were staying in. I'm walking across to the fence, and there was another pastor with me, and there was a pack of hyenas outside the fence, which is why we're going across, and he tripped and fell to the ground. And I'll tell you, without a word of a lie, every single hyena in that pack had their eyes centered on him. Now, he would have been in big trouble if there wasn't that fence there. But leopards are particularly vicious. The last thing I'd want to see in Kruger Park is a leopard with 4 wings. That'd be very swift, vicious and swift. And this guy who led us on this safari that night, and I wouldn't get out of the truck. Everyone's getting out of the truck and having coffee and tea in the middle of the night in this safari. I stayed up in the truck. Ronnie looked up at me and said, "Why aren't you getting out of the truck?" I said, "Well, because you're a better meal than me, and I'd rather they take you than me." And I stayed in the truck. But a few months later, that guide who took us around, actually on the same trip, one night got taken by a leopard, and that leopard ate him in front of the people on the tour. So you can imagine the horror of that. They are a vicious, ferocious animal. And God chooses to, through the prophet Daniel, he chooses to illustrate this guy, Alexander the Great, and the Greeks, as a leopard with 4 wings, but it also had 4 heads. Now, Alexander the Great died. Do you know what age he died at? 33. And he's on his deathbed. He got 4 generals, 4 heads on the leopard. Who does the kingdom go to? You haven't got a son old enough. He did have a son. Don't know whatever happened to him. Probably killed, murdered by one of these guys. And Alexander the Great, in legend says, in typical fashion, said it goes to the king, goes to the strongest. And so I got this quote. When he was asked who should succeed him, Alexander said the strongest, which answer led to his empire being divided between 4 of his generals, Cassander, Ptolemy, Antigonus, and Seleucus, known as Yes. Now look what happens. How are we going for time? Not bad. 15 minutes, thanks, Hunty. Then in my vision that night, verse 7. So far we've got, are you with me? It's pretty easy so far, isn't it? We've got Babylon, followed by, help me, Medo-Persia, followed by Greece, and now we've got another animal coming up. Then in my vision that night I saw a 4th beast, terrifying, dreadful, and very strong. It devoured and crushed its victims with huge iron teeth and trampled their remains beneath its feet. It was different from any of the other beasts. Notice that. It is different from any of the other beasts, and it had 10 horns. We know from history that you do have Babylon, then you have Medo-Persia, then you have Greece, and we know that the army, that the empire, that the nation that took Greece out was Rome. 168 BC, and that's a rough date to end it. 351 AD, could be 500 AD. We know that Rome gradually descended into chaos and was taken out. No kingdom has ever been like the kingdom of Rome. It was the kingdom of Rome that was around and ruling when our Lord Jesus came to the earth. Jesus was very familiar with Rome. He lived under the rule and the authority of Rome. And it's interesting to read the history around that time because they never had a clue that the King of Kings was amongst them in their empire, in their kingdom. They just lived as pagans did. And what an incredible place Rome was. We've talked about it when we looked at Daniel 2. The Colosseum. Amazing place. They used to fill the Colosseum in Rome up with water. And they'd have these pitched naval battles where they would fight to the death with 80 to 100,000 people packed in watching it. I mean, these guys knew how to play sport, blood sport, brutal sport. I mean, you go around Western Europe and the imprint of Rome is everywhere. Up in the northern part of England, right on the border with Scotland, there's this wall. The Emperor Hadrian couldn't or wouldn't be bothered going up and putting the rebellion of the Scots down. They were a wild, woolly, crazy people. And it was cold and miserable and windy up there, and he wasn't interested in taking Scotland out. Could have, but wasn't interested. And so he built this wall from one end of the island to the other, Hadrian's Wall. Has anyone been there and seen it? Unbelievable, incredible. one of the things that blew me away, and this is in Syria, was the roads that the Romans built are still in use today. And this road in Syria is still in use today, and it was a Roman road. Man, they built my road, Hunty, out to St Albans. That thing's got, it was only 10 years ago, it's got holes all over the place in it. This is a road that's been going for 2,000 plus years. They knew how to build roads. This is a Roman road still in use in Turkey. And of course, they built these beautiful roads out of stone so they get one end to the empire to the other to protect their empire. This is a aqueduct, a working aqueduct in France that I actually went to. Unbelievable, 2,000 plus years old. Look at the engineering in that. This is the Romans. You know where that is? Bath in southern England, where you can still go and have a hot bath that was built by the Romans. Unbelievable. The most sophisticated, the most advanced, the most militaristic, the largest empire the world has ever seen. No empire has ever been like the Kingdom of Rome. But look at this. I've got 5 to go. Then in my vision that night I saw a fourth beast, terrifying. This is Rome. Dreadful and very strong. It devoured and crushed its victims with huge iron teeth. Rome was a kingdom of iron. They were the first kingdom to use consistently iron, metal weapons. And they trampled their remains beneath its feet. Now this kingdom's an indescribable beast, something like a dragon. Now it was different from any of the other beasts, and it had 10 horns. Whereas Babylon, Persia, look at this, and Greece were political powers, Rome morphs into something entirely different. A beast of both political and religious authority. That's why it's different. Babylon, political power. Greece, political power. Medo-Persia, political power. Rome, initially a political power, but we're going to see in the next week or two how it morphs into being a religious power. Okay. It was different from any of the other beasts, and it had 10 horns. Interestingly, when you study history, these guys, the Goths, the Germans, my people, they're a bit crazy. And the Romans could never take them over completely. And in 9 AD, they actually crossed the Rhine and entered deep into Germany. And they seemed to be having some success. But winter was coming on. They needed to go back to their base on the other side of the Rhine. And so they started back to the base. Now there was a young German Roman officer. He was a prince of Germany. He had been brought up in Rome as a hostage but sent back to his people. The Romans believed they had him, that his heart was theirs and he belonged to them. And he was in the Roman army, and he asked the Roman general could he go ahead and find a way through as a scout. And so he took his German auxiliary ahead, but they disappeared into the forest. The Roman governor, going back with his army behind the German, thought he was in trouble, and he had to make a decision. Either they keep going and go back across the Rhine and they winter on the other side of the Rhine safe, or they go into the forest to save this Roman-German military leader. Well, he decided to go into the forest and save his friend. But his friend wasn't his friend. The German actually had remained German, and he had betrayed the Roman general. And then 9 AD, not long after Jesus was born, the Romans went into this forest and they never come out. It was called the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. And the incredible thing is that the Germans could never ever be completely taken over by the Romans. And it was 9 AD, and it was another 300 or 400 years after this, but this was the beginning of the rot for Rome. These are the only people that they could never properly defeat who they wanted to. They could never get back across the Rhine, they could never get back into those forests, and they never took Germany, or the greater part of Germany. And what happens is Rome slowly descends into chaos and is broken into 10 tribes. Now this took hundreds of years, and we're probably talking between the time of Jesus right through to about 400 or 500 AD. But eventually these 10 tribes, these 10 horns that came out of Rome, established these nations which are the foundation of modern Europe. And you have the Franks, who are the French. You have the Illuminati, who are the Germans, the Lombards, who are the Italians, the actual area around Rome. And so these tribes descend. They're always there, but they descend upon that ancient kingdom of Rome and they break it up into 10 different horns or 10 different sections. The Anglo-Saxons are the English. The Burgundians, number 6, I don't know what happened there. That's my people, the Swiss. Well, I'm Swiss, German, English. Actually, if I was a dog, I suppose you'd say he's mongrel bred. I'm everything. In fact, I wonder sometimes if I got a DNA test, I might even be Asian and African. Who knows? The Visigoths became the Spanish, the Heruli the Italians, the Vandals the Africans, and the Ostrogoths the Italians. Now, I want to finish on this because we can't go too far today, but I find this very interesting. As I was looking at the horns, what are the horns? The 10 tribes of Europe. Are you with me or have I lost you? You with me? Yeah. As I was looking at the horns, suddenly another small horn, a small kingdom, a small power appeared among them. 3 of the first horns were torn out by the roots to make room for it. So this small horn, this small power comes out, and 3 of these 10 powers is uprooted to make way for this small horn. This little horn had eyes like the human eyes and a mouth that was speaking arrogantly. Now I'm going to put it to you, and I'm going to prove this next week, that this little horn that comes out, destroys 3 of the 10 powers and leaves only 7 left, is Vatican Rome. Let me just give you, my time's up, isn't it? What's the time? 11:02. I better stop. I don't want to because it's so interesting. Am I the only one interested here, or is this interesting? Look at this. Don't worry about Hunty. As I was looking at the horn, suddenly another small horn appeared among them. Well, we know that Vatican Rome came from among, and at the same time as the 10 tribes of Europe were rising up. So from 300 AD onwards, these tribes were establishing themselves, and we know that the Church of Rome was establishing itself at the same time. I'm going to finish on this. I've got to. Hunty will kill me, but I've got to say this as I finish. Look. Rome is not the original gospel church. It never was. That church was set up by Jesus, and it's called the Apostles' Church, or the Church of the Apostles, or the Apostolic Church. Through time, there was a division, and I'll go into this next week, between the Apostolic Church and Rome. And Rome arose at the same time, this is historical fact, as those 10 tribes. And they wiped 3 of them out, and we'll start there next week. Okay. Last question. Why do you think God gives us these prophecies? What's it all about? Is this just a history lesson that Lloyd loves? I love history. I don't know whether you can tell, but I actually love history. I actually love telling these stories, and there's more next week. Why do you reckon he did it? Give us hope, to give us little glimpses into the future, because this might start at ancient Babylon. And it moves from ancient Babylon to Medo-Persia, to Greece, to Rome, to Vatican Rome, to Middle Ages Europe, right down to our time. And what God is doing is He's giving us a glimpse into the future to assure us. Because I can tell you what happens right after this, and we'll see it next week, is the whole prophecy stops, God hauls it up, and He gives a description of Himself, and He says, and He does that because He's saying, I'm the King, I am in charge, I've got this under control. We better pray. The kids are coming in, the pastor's gone overtime. Let's pray. Lord, thank You for these prophecies which are so fascinating. Bless us now as we go into the after service with New Blend. Can't wait for that, Lord. It's going to be a wonderful day. And may we go home with nothing other than a longing and a desire to study these prophecies more, so that we can know You and have assurance that You, who has been with Your people from the beginning, will take us through to the end, is my prayer in Your name. Amen. We have a how many minute break? 10-minute break. That's plenty of time, isn't it, Andrew? Let's have a 10-minute break and come back in here for church. Looking forward to church today.